He has more than 35,000 followers on Twitter. He did a TED Talk, he speaks on Google conventions, and now he's here for us for Internet Innovators. Welcome, Ethan Zuckerman.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you.
You are a director of the Center for Civic Media at MIT and a research scientist at MIT's Media Lab, where you research on the media cloud. What exactly is the media cloud?
Sure. Well, my research in general is on this question of media and social change. So one of the things that I believe is that because it's so easy at this moment in time for people to make media and put it out in the world, that it's a very powerful way to make social change. Media Cloud is a tool that we've been building for almost 10 years now, and it's a way of tracking how people are having success with campaigns to make social change and how those campaigns affect the media as a whole.
So ordinary people or companies as well?
So you could use the tool for companies, but we tend to use the tool to study activists. So for instance, when you had the movement against ACTA, here in Europe to fight against computer legislation that many people thought would be very damaging and very dangerous. We were able to study a phenomenon like ACTA by looking at how that subject gets covered through the media. So who's influential, who's powerful. We're able to track citizen-led movements and to see how they use media and use it to make social change.
And what do you do then? Do you just track it, or what are you going to do with it?
Well, we're academics, so we study it and we publish it, but we also work very, very closely with activism organizations. So for instance, there's a big battle in the US over access to abortion. And so we work very closely with organizations that work on women's rights and look to see who's winning that battle over the right to choose and how those issues are playing out in the media. We've done work with people who are studying Ebola to try to figure out how media was being used to create panic around Ebola and how other people were able to use media to calm people down and really focus it on the people who are affected by Ebola, who are the people who are actually on the ground in West Africa. So we do the research, but we do the research so that individual activists, NGOs, governmental groups that are trying to make change can learn about what works, what doesn't work, and can go out and use it for their own campaigns.
You research as well, or you talk a lot about human and international connections. How is it? Like, I always have the feeling I'm so connected, like, with everyone around the world, but I don't have the feeling I actually talk to them. What do you say?
So I published a book called Digital Cosmopolitans, which talks exactly about this phenomenon. And what you're describing is something that I call imaginary cosmopolitanism. It's very easy on the internet to feel like there's information from everywhere in the world. Look, I just saw a web page in Chinese. Here's someone Arabic on my Twitter timeline. But most of us are listening to the people that we went to high school with, the people from our hometowns. A lot of these tools like Facebook are very, very good at strengthening those old existing social networks. They're not nearly as good as helping us make those new ties across language or across culture. And what I really worry about is that sense that we're having a global point of view, when in effect, in many cases, we're having this very highly local point of view. I think that's potentially very dangerous for us, and that's one of the things that I've tried to work against with projects like Global Voices, which uses social media to do reporting from all over the world.
And is there any explanation for this?
Well, so I wrote a book on it, so yes, there's a lot of explanation.
I can just read it now.
The very quick version of it is there's a very basic human tendency called homophily. And homophily is the tendency of birds of a feather to flock together.
You have to explain that.
When we are given a group of people, if you walk into a room where you don't know anyone, you're likely to sit down next to a woman who's white, who has long hair. And this is not because you're racist, or this is not because you know that person. When we interview you after the fact, you will say, I sat next to her because I thought she looked friendly. We very naturally sort ourselves in life by race, by religion, by social status, we're remarkably good at doing it. It seems to be one of these basic human tendencies. And the new software that we're building actually is built around amplifying those tendencies. Something like Facebook wants us to flock together because it knows that we feel safe, we'll share more, we'll talk more. The last thing Facebook wants to do is challenge and broaden our worldview by putting people who think differently, have very different opinions, who we don't understand. They don't want to bring that into the conversation because we get uncomfortable, we disengage, we post more, we post less. So all of these social media tools, on one level or another, have a tendency to sort of reinforce this human tendency towards homophily. And so the net, unless we really consciously choose to use it to get a broader, more diverse worldview, probably isn't going to make our world any wider. It may actually make it narrower.
Let's talk a little bit about content journalism. I read you said that you don't want online business models which are providing free content, but you have to give your data. But don't we already live in a world where we're like, it's totally normal that we don't have to pay for any content?
Sure. So you're referring to an essay that I wrote last year called The Internet's Original Sin, in which I argued that we picked one business model for the internet, and it's a really bad business model to pick. And it's a business model where everything is free, and we pay for it, and we pay for it in two ways. We pay for it with our attention to ads, and we pay for it with our data in the hopes of making those ads more valuable. When I wrote about this, I said that 20 years ago, this was the only viable way to make the web work. It wasn't viable at that point to charge micropayments for content. It was very hard to do subscriptions. When I was building a big social media site in 1995, ads were really the only thing that we knew how to do to make money at that point. But now 20 years later, we have a lot of different options. We could find ways to build a system that lets us voluntarily track what we read and give a fixed payment that gets broken up, and we give most of it to whoever we read the most, and we give little bits to people who we read only a little. We could try systems like this. We could try systems of micropayments where we pay a very, very small fraction of a cent for a page of content. But so far we haven't done it, and I find it very frustrating because the model that we're in right now isn't working well for most publishers, and we tend to treat it like it's inevitable, like it's a law of nature, like gravity, but in fact it's just a habit, and it's actually a fairly new habit.
And do you see any new business models coming up, or maybe what's already there in the US and what isn't here in Germany?
Someone recently published an essay called 76 Business Models for Journalism. And it was a list of different things that news sites in the United States are trying. And some of them are potentially very bad. They're things like native advertising, where you can't tell the ads from the stories. Some of them are quite positive. They are organizing events so that readers can come to a conference or can come have a discussion with authors or columnists. The New York Times is doing this, and it's very successful. Some of them are just really weird and crazy. The Washington Post has a wine club where you sign up for the Washington Post and you also get a case of wine, and you pay for the wine and you also pay for the Post. The point is, there's 76 of these different ideas, and by the time you post this interview, there's probably going to be 78. And so simply getting more creative, getting more open-minded, trying different things, this is a direction that we really need the news to go in. Because this one model of the banner ad backed with targeted advertising, backed with the culture of surveillance, I think it's really bad for us. I think it's bad for us as citizens to be putting ourselves under surveillance all the time. I think it keeps us from paying close attention to these effects of surveillance in broader aspects of our lives.
Thank you very much, Zuckerman.
Absolutely.
Thank
you
you.
so much.